Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Tomorrow is officially the day where supposedly we are supposed to be receiving an update on if Palantir got the over $500 million contract with the NHS. Now, this video is going to be a video that essentially recaps the entire journey of the NHS saga. I am hoping this is the last video I have to do on this topic, and the next video I'm going to do is going to be a video that says, congratulations, we got the contract. Don't know if that's going to happen, but this is the video where I want to go through basically the timeline of the events that have happened all the way since 2020 up until 2023, and then discuss essentially what are the merits for us getting this contract, what are some of the developments that have happened over the past couple of months that I found particularly significant in regards to leading me to believe we should get this deal, and also what are some of the bear cases for why we don't get this deal and why the job ultimately doesn't get done. This is shared from Lord Herugrim on Twitter, shout out to them, where they basically showed the NHS's website, and January 10th, 2023 was the first stage of truly beginning the procurement process, or what they called the sort of tender process to be able to figure out who this contract is going to go to. And as you can see at the bottom, 28 September 2023, the contract should be awarded. Does that mean that they publicly announced it? Does that mean we get it? Does that mean it's official? I really have no clue. I have no clue how UK government law works. All I know is that it says 28 September 2023, they award the contract. I'm assuming we will get an answer either tomorrow or very soon, and we will know what's going on in the world of Palantir. Taking a quick look at Palantir stock before we get into the video, 1463, up 4.8% on the day, hit a high of 1489. They got a $250 million contract. I just did a video about that a couple hours ago. And I don't know if that's the reason why the stock is up. Macro's a little bit up. Some stocks are up, some stocks are down, but Palantir up 5% on the day. It would be pretty crazy if we got $250 million for 3 years from the military in the United States, and then another reportedly $611 million if you add on the extension for the NHS contract over 5 years or 7 years, to be able to add that on to Palantir's list of contracts. I mean, $250 million is crazy. Another $611 million is also just insane by two of the leading democracies in the world. One of them for the army, a contract for AI machine learning research, another one for the entire healthcare system of the United Kingdom. Would be a very big deal. Question is if we can get it. So I want to go through a little bit of the timeline of things that have happened in regards to the NHS and get you up to date on why we are in this situation, and then overall how we are going to potentially solve it or not benefit from the situation. Here's a video I did. I'm not going to play the video, but this is from March 7th, 2022. The title of the video was "People in the UK tried to get rid of Palantir. Now the NHS depends on them." I'll put all the links to some of the stuff I'm showing in the description. And the whole concept of that video was me first discovering the beautiful little media organization called Foxglove. For those that don't know what Foxglove is, it's an advisory group in the UK funded by George Soros. George Soros used to have a lot of shares of Palantir. He didn't like Peter Thiel supporting Donald Trump, so he dumped all of his shares in the DPO, or a little bit shortly after the DPO. And essentially, he funds some of these organizations that have unique perspectives on the world. Foxglove in particular has a perspective that Palantir is stealing your data, they're conglomerating your data, they're amalgamating it, they're using it for profit, blah, 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 blah. You guys have kind of heard the narrative of Palantir being the evil company that takes your data, even though the narrative doesn't make any sense if you actually look at the company, what they're doing with the data, why they're doing stuff with the data. I mean, for goodness sakes, HCA, one of the largest healthcare companies in the United States, just gave a phenomenal presentation at AIPCon. I have a reaction video coming to that soon as well. And the level of depth Palantir is deploying in the healthcare space with a variety of companies that exist. And I don't even have time to go through the entire list of developments we've done in healthcare. You could argue Palantir is a healthcare company. It's a lot of, versions of companies, but healthcare is one of their main fortes, powering 16% of beds in the United States. They're not trying to destroy your data and steal your data, manipulate your data. The big tech companies are. And there's been a lot of controversies with the NHS and some of the other big tech companies for them actually exploiting data. For example, one of Facebook's pixels, which is one of the back-end tracking items you use when you're doing advertising, was fluttered all over the NHS website in patient portals. And so patient data ended up getting used in regards to advertising. That's a controversy that happened a couple months ago. So, the idea that Palantir is stealing your data and all this stuff, it's a narrative that's silly. It's a narrative that's sad. The problem is it's a narrative that has been propagandized and funded for in the United Kingdom. And the reason we even have a controversy for if Palantir is going to get the deal or not, if you're new to the community, this is sort of the internal battle that's going on. Will Palantir get the deal? Will they not get the deal? If you've been a part of the community for a while, the reason this battle is happening is because there is a lot of propaganda in the United Kingdom, which is where we're supposed to be getting the deal from, that says Palantir is an evil company, and it's funded by Foxglove, George Soros, etc. So when you've got a ton of people basically flooding the tabloids in the United Kingdom and the British media, basically convincing the average citizen that doesn't have the time to do the due diligence or care about Palantir, but they're reading the headlines that says Palantir is going to steal my data, there is the threat of patients opting out of giving their data to the new federated data platform, which is what the NHS is trying to create. And if that happens, then the platform is worthless, right? You need the data, which is why Palantir is not trying to steal the data. They're trying to amalgamate the data to make it valuable and get insights and all that good stuff. But that's not what a lot of people in the UK may believe. Now, I've heard counter narratives from people in my comments. I have, I would say, a fairly large UK audience that comments in the videos, responds, DMs on Twitter. And a lot of times they have said, dude, at the end of the day, like, we don't give a shit. We just need to fix the backlogs and wait times and the inefficiencies and bureaucracy of the NHS. To backtrack a little bit, the NHS is a nationalized healthcare service for the United Kingdom. And essentially, it is, in the UK, there is some versions of private healthcare, but not as much. And you could argue, is private healthcare good or bad? That's a whole different debate. But definitely, objectively, we can say private healthcare is a lot more efficient and effective in terms of just like not having ridiculous wait times, like month-long wait times when it comes to actually solving core problems for patients. So as a result of that, when you have a nationalized healthcare service that for the past 2 decades has wasted $10 billion on legacy IT infrastructure, that is the whole reason Rishi Sunak, who is a techno-optimist, who is on the thumbnail of this video, who is the newly elected Prime Minister of the UK, wants to usher in a era in which the UK actually is establishing themselves as a not only tech hub, but an innovative tech hub. And in order to do that, you've got to be able to fundamentally transform the one thing that is responsible for 67 million people's healthcare, which is the NHS. And if you can do that through data and technology without having to sacrifice the socialist nature of the healthcare system and privatize it, because that's just not what the United Kingdom wants to do, we have to respect that. If that's the case, technology is what makes it more efficient if you're not going to let the free market make it efficient. And if that's the case, Palantir should be able to get the job done. But the problem is a lot of propaganda that exists in the UK is, the reason for why we potentially might not see them get this deal. Now, remember, Palantir was contracted in 2020 by the NHS, particularly for COVID vaccine distribution. So immediately, the NHS gave them a $34 million contract because they realized how valuable they were. And that's when they started realizing, hey, what if they could fix a lot of stuff? If you go to some articles from the Financial Times, Palantir was able to reduce backlogs in the Chelsea and Westminster trusts, which are just the UK word for hospital, by 28%. So they were able to show not only did we distribute the vaccine effectively, not only did we reduce backlogs and wait times in different hospitals, we are the number one solution and the only solution that has been able to do this in the history of the NHS. So you should really take us seriously. So the next thing that happened was in June of 2022, where Palantir hired Indra Joshi, the AI chief from the NHS, to help them get this deal. Why was this really important? Indra Joshi was the head of AI and data science at the NHS. She left to go work at Palantir back in June of 2022. One would argue Palantir is obviously lobbying the NHS. It's really effective if the head of AI and data science at the NHS that managed all the workflows around AI and data science left to Palantir, the leading AI and data science company, to be able to help them get this deal. I mean, it seemed very obvious that the reason they recruited Indra Joshi and put her in a executive role at the company was because of her ties to the NHS and her ability to lobby with the UK Parliament, and also because she knows the NHS from a data perspective better than most people. So any questions Palantir had about, so how does the UK think about this in regards to the data? How does the NHS work with this in regards to enabling AI and machine learning? She was the number one person to have the answer. She also followed me on Twitter, which was really cool. So as a result of that, it made sense for them to hire the person who used to work at the NHS. And it was another development that led me to believe, I feel like this is happening. And if it's happening, it's a really interesting development in regards to Palantir being able to get this deal. The next thing that happened was in April of 2023, a consortium of Palantir competitors threw in the towel. Now, what was this development? This was basically a bunch of companies that back in March of 2023 said, hey, we're going to compete against Palantir and bid for the contract. A month later, in April of 2023, the healthcare, I forgot the name of the website, but the Healthcare Times, basically the number one website everyone goes in the UK to get updates from the NHS, they had an article that reported, no, these competitors have thrown in the towel. They have said, look, we have no chance to compete against Palantir, and we're not going to compete against Palantir. I got DMs from people in the UK around that area seeing kind of this whole thing play out, saying, yeah, these companies are definitely out of the ring. There's no way they're going to compete against Palantir. And they have explicitly said, we are not going for the NHS contract anymore. So in April of 2023, not only were we seeing all these different developments from the personnel side for people that Palantir was recruiting, but we were also seeing competitors that thought they had a chance to compete for the deal, thought they had a chance to put in a tender process to bid, basically pull out of the deal. The reason they went into the deal in March is because they thought the procurement process had been unfair, and that Palantir, because of what they were able to do for vaccine distribution, was getting an unfair competitive advantage and being highly preferred by people procuring the software. Obviously, they would be, because they got a really complicated thing done in 2020. They kind of proved that they worked. So yeah, they're going to likely get considered for a much bigger deal. But once they realized they had no chance of getting in, they basically said, all right, we're not going to be able to do it. Now, after that, in June of 2023, we got this update. Palantir got a $31 million deal from the NHS to transfer data from existing legacy platforms into the new FTP. That doesn't mean Palantir is getting the deal, but I found it oddly peculiar back in June. Why is the NHS giving Palantir $31 million to do an entire transfer of data from legacy IT infrastructure that they were using to the new federated data platform? Like, it would really be weird if they gave the FTP and all the control around the FTP to this new tech company that's not Palantir, but Palantir is the one conducting the transfer of data from the old stuff into the new stuff. I thought logically it would be very easy if you control the new stuff, right? You own the back end of the FTP, the federated data platform. And so it's very simple to transfer data from the legacy stuff into the new stuff, because it's one company that's controlling the whole thing and is able to do it. There's not too many cooks in the kitchen. So we got that contract in June of 2023. And then this was the final piece of news that was bullish, and then we'll get into some of the bearish stuff. Back in June 21st, 2023, here's the head of Palantir's UK, Lewis Mosley, being asked about getting this NHS contract, and here's what he had to say. Propagandists, they just haven't been able to understand that. And so I think he would have done well in the debate, but I think they didn't do the debate because the NHS told them that you guys are probably going to get the deal, so you don't need to.
You're in the process of bidding for about a £400 million contract. I know you don't want to get into the details of that bidding process, but can you just give us a sense as to your level of confidence as to whether or not that's going to fall to Palantir? Can you give us a nod as to how you feel about that process?
I'm really sorry, Tom. I can't comment on ongoing procurement processes.
Okay, so right there, that was another little hint, because if you looked at his smile, I'm really sorry, Tom, I can't comment about ongoing procurement processes. Like, to me, again, it felt like, dude, I can't say anything. I don't want to get sued, but like, don't worry about it. That's the vibe I got. And maybe I'm wrong on that. I could definitely be wrong on that, but that's the vibe I got. And it kind of made me feel like, you know what? Maybe this is going to happen. Now, this guy in particular is very interesting, Lewis Mosley. Why is he interesting? In March of 2023, 3 months before this June interview that he did, he was supposed to debate Corey Kreider. Corey Kreider is the head of Foxglove, that organization I mentioned a couple minutes ago that releases all the propaganda around Palantir. They were set up to do a debate around the deal for the viability of Palantir's role in the NHS. The deal was scheduled for March 15th. March 13th, the debate is off. They're not doing the debate anymore. There's going to be a public debate. There was going to be thousands of people in attendance at like some stadium at some conference in the UK. It wasn't happening. The reason I thought it wasn't happening is not because Lewis pulled out. I think he was ready to do the debate. I think he had some dog in him. I think he wanted to kind of prove Corey Kreider was wrong. The reason he pulled out, I believe, is because the NHS called up Palantir. And they were like, guys, the public doesn't like you already. They don't know you enough yet. You're probably going to get the deal. There's no reason to go through this entire spectacle of a full debate that the media is just going to, pick apart. Everyone would pick apart that debate. I'm a former competitive debater, so I would have a fun time analyzing it. But I think they called them up and were like, you guys, we can't say 100% you're going to get the deal, but you're likely going to get it. Which means, why would you want to risk doing this media spectacle and just fanning the fires that Foxglove is casting on you guys being an evil spy company, when we know you're not an evil spy company? You guys know you're not an evil spy company. We need to make sure the public understands you're not an evil spy company. And that debate, if anything goes wrong, if Corey just out debates you, which I don't know about Corey Kreider in terms of her debate skills, but I wouldn't put it against her for being incredibly well prepared and just like pulling a gotcha moment, that would look very bad for the UK trying to procure Palantir, or for the NHS in general saying, hey, you should trust Palantir. So I think that's the reason that debate got canceled. that also just leads you to believe that, well, if I'm correct on that hypothesis, and that's the reason they didn't do the debate, because, you could argue, oh, maybe Palantir had a change of mind last minute. Why would they agree to do the debate in the first place? If they knew this would have such big public backlash, they wouldn't have agreed to do the debate. The reason they agreed is because they probably thought that Foxglove was lying so badly and that their arguments would be so absolute garbage that it would make more sense to do a debate and at least have a platform to get their message out there to the British public. Unless Big Daddy calls you and says, you don't got to do a debate. You're good to go. Like, don't make this a big deal. Let's just move on with this. And that's why they pulled out a debate. That's my hypothesis. I could be wrong on it, but ultimately that's why I think they pulled out. And then shortly after, 3 months later, Lewis Mosley goes on Bloomberg, and he is smiling the way he's smiling right there and saying, "Yep, I think I can't comment, Tom, but I think we'll be okay." And now finally, this is the latest update we got. Ex-NHS tech chief joins company competing for the NHS contract. So shout out to Lord Grimm again on Twitter. This is the full article. Quantexa. This is a UK company, data analytics company. Mr. Gold, who is the ex-national director of digital transformation in the NHS, did not have dealings with Quantexa in office. He informed the committee he established the NHS data store at the start of the pandemic, and he told the committee that at the time I had recommended the ministers that we use emergency powers to award the contract to Palantir. So back in 2020, this guy was the ex-national director for digital transformation at the NHS, and he was the one who really pushed for Palantir getting the contract back in 2020 when it came to vaccine distribution. He recently joined the company competing with Palantir, Quantexa, as like an advisor. It said Matthew Gold played a significant role in the procurement of the NHS data store during the pandemic, which was like the beginnings of the federated data platform. Being unbiased, he gave the initial deal to Palantir because they were the best ones to do the job. But he recently just joined a company that's competing with Palantir pretty intensely, named Quantexa, for this deal. Now, I have not really heard of Quantexa before. This is their website. Unified data and drive AI-enabled decisions. Obviously sounds very much like Palantir, right? Protect, optimize, grow your organization with the power of Quantex's decision intelligence platform and outcome-driven solutions. I mean, basically sounds like Palantir to be able to make data-driven decisions in a much more meaningful way. So it makes sense if they're based in the UK that they're competing for this contract with the NHS. Now becomes a question of what is the probability that this dude, who is one of the ex-directors at the NHS, joining this company. How does that lead to the competitive nature of Palantir being able to get this deal? Personally, I don't think this is going to have an impact. At the end of the day, look, here's my thoughts. I think we're getting this deal. The only way we don't get this deal is if the UK government has fundamentally decided that the public will not trust Palantir for whatever irrational reason that may exist. And if that's the case, and if they truly believe that, we're not going to get this deal, or we're going to get a small part of this deal, and the deal is going to be split up between many companies. If this deal is split up between many companies, I think that's stupid. I think the NHS will regret that decision. I think you will have too many cooks in the kitchen. You will have more bureaucracy. You won't have a unified system to be able to get the job done. That is one possibility. The other possibility is we don't get the deal at all because of NHS concerns of backlash. I think that is improbable given all the deals we've gotten so far and how effective we've been with the NHS and how much we've showed the NHS like, hey, this is a real thing. We can really provide this for you. The final possibility, which is the third option, is we get the deal. I believe we will get the deal. I could be very wrong about that because I am not inside the discussions that the UK government is having with NHS officials around the potential issues with Palantir, whether they are technological or backlash based. I think more backlash versus technological. And if that ends up being the result, then we don't get the deal. And that would suck because of whatever, political dogmatism that the NHS has. But if we do get the deal, I don't think if we don't get the deal, I don't think Quantexa, that company I just mentioned, is the reason why. I don't think there's another tech company out there that's stopping us from getting this deal. They might get the deal if we don't get the deal because the UK has to give it to somebody, but they're not going to be the reason we don't get the deal. It's not like their tech it's not like their tech is better than Palantir's tech. It's more so along the lines of politics versus technology. So one also thing I forgot to mention, Alex Karp back in May of 2023 met Rishi Sunak at a baseball game in the United States. I don't think they were just talking about, the Yankees. I think they were actually talking about this NHS deal. And I think you meet informally at these type of events because you're discussing business versus just having a good chat with my pal from the UK, who's like the prime minister, who has obviously a lot better things to do, along with the CEO of a big tech company that has a lot better things to do. So I think them both meeting together in the baseball game, along with all the stuff I described in this video, I just think it's unlikely that we don't get this deal. Is it possible? Sure. And if it doesn't happen, that'll suck. If we do get this deal, the implications on the stock long term are incredible. Short term, I don't really care. But if we're managing the entire UK healthcare system, there's a lot of other socialized healthcare systems out in Europe that are going to see the success of that. Hell, there's even Canada. And I think they will be very interested in Palantir. If we don't get the deal, it's not a deal breaker. I mean, it will suck, and eventually I think we'll move on from it and we'll get other deals. But would be one of those deals that Palantir has probably spent millions of dollars lobbying to be able to get. I think it's likely we will get it. The question simply becomes, is it going to be announced tomorrow or is it going to be announced on a different day? And if we don't get it, again, I think the reason is going to be because of politics, not because of technology. It is not something, let me be very clear, I would buy the stock over today, September 27th. I wouldn't buy the stock because you think this deal we get tomorrow is going to pop the stock. Maybe it does. And then it probably would sell off, to be honest. I mean, Palantir is one of those stocks that needs a lot of stuff to happen before we see a run up on these 1 or 2 day little pops. I mean, that's not interesting at all. And I think a lot of that is, this is not one of those deals where you care about the stock. This is one of those deals where you care about the company managing an entire country's healthcare system. The byproduct of that will be shareholder returns. It just doesn't have to happen tomorrow. So those are my thoughts. Let's see what happens. Let's see if we get this NHS deal. I hope it happens. And we'll see. I'm just as confused as most of you if it's actually going to happen. I think I have done a decent job at compiling all the evidence saying that I think it's going to happen, but who knows? And this is the fun ride of embracing the unknown and the chaos of investing in a high growth tech company and covering it, and an exciting company like Palantir. Let's see if this happens. Thank you guys so much for listening, watching. Let me know your thoughts if we get the deal, and I'll see you in the next one.